My name is Pam, and I'm a naturalist at Long Lake Conservation Center. Today, I'm going to take you on an adventure, and we're going to learn about lichen. Now, I'm sure that most of you are thinking, what is lichen? What does it look like? What does it do? Those are some of the questions that we will be answering during this video. Now, even though you might not know much about lichen, it actually covers about 6% of the planet. All over the world, there have been over 17,000 different species of lichen discovered and identified. In North America alone, we can find 3,600 different species. Lichen has the ability to grow on different surfaces, including ground substrate, which is really just a fancy way of saying soil, sand, mosses, and decomposing down logs. It grows on rock substrates like cliffs, boulders, pebbles, concrete, shingles, and talus. Talus is just an accumulated heap of rocks at the base of a cliff. And then there are tree substrates with lichen growing on the bark and sometimes hanging from the branches. Lichens also come in a wide variety of color and structures, from pale blue all the way to bright red in color, and some growing very closely to the surface of what it is growing on, and others can be larger, fluffy, leaf-like structures. Even though there are many different species of lichen, the three basic forms that we are going to be talking about today are Friticos, also called shrubby and branch-like, Crustus, flat and crusty, dusty, and Folios, which is leaf-like and has two sides. We're lucky enough to have all three kinds of these lichens here at Long Lake. Come along with me and let's see if we can find them. So you might notice that I have taken you down our Blue Brigade Trail to try and find some lichen. This is because you're likely to find lichen growing on the ground, rocks, logs, or other moist areas, and the Blue Trail has all of these. As you can see, there are plenty of trees and a water source nearby. A really cool fact about lichen is that they can provide food and habitats for many animals like spiders, mites, and other insects. They can also help to break down rocks so that the rocks then become soil and the minerals are released back into the ground. Lichen is considered to be a pioneer species, which means that it is one of the first species to colonize in barren or disrupted environments. This is very important because it means that the lichen that there is there can start to break down rocks and logs to release nutrients back into the soil, along with being a food source for many different animals, one being caribou. Lichens are made up of two or more organisms, algae and fungus. Because lichens enable algae to live all over the world in many different climates, they also provide a means to convert carbon dioxide into oxygen through the process of photosynthesis, which is what we all need to survive. One of the really cool ways that lichens directly benefit humans is their ability to absorb everything in their atmosphere, especially pollutants. Lichens can help to provide us with information about the world around us. Toxins and pollutants from the atmosphere are absorbed by the lichen. Scientists then can take samples of lichen to measure the levels of these toxins and pollutants. They then have a better idea about the air quality in that specific area. So a lot of lichen can be an indicator of good air quality. So we've learned quite a bit about lichens, but now let's take some time and see what they look like. If we take a look here on that tree branch that is sitting on the rock, we can see that there's a Friticos or shrubby lichen called boreal oak moss lichen. The reason I know this is a Friticos lichen is because of its bushy or shrubby growths. This particular lichen grows on branches and trunks of all trees and likes to grow in sunny spots. This species of lichen is more tolerant of living in areas with higher pollution, so this lichen can be found in more urban areas, as well as here at Long Lake. Friticos lichens can be pendant and hair-like, upright and shrubby, or upright and cup-like. Many Friticos lichens have round branches that have a central core, and others are hollow in the middle. Other fruticose lichens have flat branches that tangle up with each other. The next type of lichen I want to see if I can find is the crustus. The crustus lichen is distinguishable in that they're just like crusts. They form a crust over a surface like a boulder, the soil, a car, or your roof shingles. Here you can see it on this rock. They can come in many bright, vibrant colors like sunny yellow, orange and red, as well as grays and greens. Crustus lichens are pressed against their substrate. This specific crustus lichen is called single-spored map lichen. This tends to grow on exposed silicous rocks. If you look closer, you will notice the brownish gray to pale gray coloring with black dots. This may be a hard lichen to find because it can at times blend in with the rock that it grows on. The last type of lichen that we're going to look for is the Folios Lichen. This is the leaf-like lichen that has two sides. This Folios Lichen is called common green shield lichen, and it grows on the bark of all kinds of trees in the sun or partial shade. Folios lichens have two easily distinguishable sides. In other words, there's a top side and there's a bottom side. They can be very flat, leafy like lettuce, or convoluted and full of ridges and bumps. This is one of the more common lichens that you might see around, as they are one of the first noticeable lichens to return to areas after a loss due to pollution. Lichen is composed of two or more organisms, an algae, cyanobacteria, and a fungus living together in a symbiotic mutual relationship, which means that the relationship between organisms of different species where both organisms benefit from the association and partnership. A fun way to think about this is by listening to this story about Freddy Fungus and Alice Algae, as told by Joe Walewski in his book, Lichens of the North Woods. This story can help us to better understand how the relationship between the two organisms is symbiotic. Freddy Fungus lived alone in a spacious home that he built himself. Freddy was a master architect, engineer, and builder. Unfortunately, with all of his skills, Freddy couldn't sustain a life alone. He was quickly fading away, primarily because he just didn't take care of himself. He couldn't cook. Then Alice Algae came along. She seemed a magician with food. She appeared to concoct fabulous meals from nothing more than thin air. And for Alice, making food was more than a passion. It was a way of life. It became an obsession, and she routinely made more than was possible to eat by herself, for she, too, lived alone. When they first met, everyone could see they were destined to be together. True love? Maybe. All they would admit was that they immediately took a liking to each other. Freddy and Alice developed a relationship in which they lived symbiotically ever after. But symbiosis isn't always as you might think. Freddy and Alice didn't benefit equally. Freddy couldn't survive without Alice. Alice felt trapped. She couldn't be herself. As time passed, anyone could see that their relationship was on the rocks. Even though these living things are so small and seem insignificant, they do play a very important role in nature, in establishing new ecosystems, providing food for animals, preventing soil erosion, and for monitoring pollutant levels in our environment, along with many other uses. One of the main animals to use lichen as a food source is caribou. When the conditions become cold and other ground food is scarce, caribou will eat lichen to help make it through the winter months. While there are many species of lichen that are edible, there are also many poisonous species, so it's important to not eat lichen out in the wild. Well, I want to thank you for coming along on this adventure with me and learning a little about lichen. Now with some of these skills, you will be able to explore safely on your own and discover more about lichen in the area around you.